Hello world! Patricia, O'Connor, and Frida, Reba, Darcy here today on the Bonsai balcony. It is Wednesday. It is our day off. It is about 5 minutes to high noon, and there seems to be a bit of a ceasefire in the construction. My guess is they've put down their hammers and gone to lunch. Bon appetit. We probably won't get away with this, but I just thought that I would start our video during this time and see how long it is that I'm the loudest thing in the neighborhood. Anyway, today on our Wednesday show, I thought I would remind everybody that since it is the first week of June, Frida, that means that we have a few things to consider when it comes to our bonsai trees. Quick look at our guy wires here. They are. This is the show we did the other day. I'm using that envelope clip, and then I got a guy wire there, and I got a guy wire there, all coming from the same point. And we could probably already take this off after 4 or 5 days. We'll give that a week or two. And we did one on our bald cypresses too. I've got this branch, and this branch. Did I show them all? This branch, and this branch. And they all wad up down there on that clip. Boom, bada boom, bada bing. And you don't have to do this very long. I don't know if I said that whenever I did the video on it, but we don't have to leave this on here for months at a time. This is June. This is when the part of the year when things really can start cranking up. 5 minutes, that's how long it was before somebody had to go back to work. Those 4 times. June, that's the part of, look, we got little new shoots here. This is the time of the year where our season really starts to ramp up. We're no longer can call this spring. It should be, and it's still kind of unseasonably cool here, but we're getting warmer days with more warmer days coming. So what I would just like to point out a few things. One, I have a lot of pines. Some of them are single flush pines, and some of them are multi-flush pines. And the multi-flush pines, which are the Japanese black pines, on those guys, if I am going to do candle cutting and they are in bonsai pots, we are starting to get in to the time of year where I would start taking up the fertilizer. This guy just got repotted, no candle cutting for it. This guy has got its, this guy is on restriction because of some work we had on it. But then these other guys that are just in little tiny bonsai pots and all that, we're going to go through here and do our candles cutting on these guys in July. Now, we need to pick up the fertilizer. If it's the type of fertilizer where we can pick up, which is what I have, then I will need to pick that up 30 days before I do candle cutting. So today is not the day to do that, but this week, for instance, and I'll explain. We're going to use as an example, this is a little Mame Japanese black pine. In fact, it's one of my favorite. It's probably it's our smallest bonsai tree. And it's in a little wabi-sabi pot. And oh, sucker is just tiny. Let me turn it around where I can show you, where I can show off the good side. All right. So, okay, we're gonna use this guy as an example, and I just took the fertilizer out of the way because it is almost bigger than the tree. I'll put it back because I'm not picking the fertilizer up on this today. But this is gonna be our Mame example. Mame, meaning being, more than one of those trees would fit in your hand. And it is a ponderosa, it doesn't count, but let's just say, because it's a big ass tree here, let's just say this is a Japanese black pine. And for this size of a tree, the needles, the perfect size, I think, I'm just gonna say off the top of my head, would be about an inch. For that size tree, if that were a Japanese black pine. Ponderosas make really long needles, but even then, the length of those needles don't exactly scale with that if you were to try to, in your mind's eye, picture that as a giant tree, so it doesn't quite work. But it would need smaller needles, is what I'm saying. So, but it wouldn't need needles this small. So, that has to do, and why am I saying that? Well, as a tree that is going to get the smallest possible needles, our timing on when we pick up our fertilizer is 30 days before we do our candle cutting. And we need to think about that beforehand. Candle cutting season varies depending on where you live, because it's like, does your spring come early or late and stuff like that, right? But for here, me in the Bay Area, candle cutting season is usually in July. So at that point, we go through and cut back all the new candles that the tree has made, and it will respond to that sometime in July, right? And it will respond to that by making a cluster of buds in that place. And we leave those alone until almost fall, and when they've grown all the way out and used all the energy that the tree had for that second flush that it had to grow because we cut it, then we select it down to two that make a nice even pair, and we cut the rest. And that's how and that will in effect make the needles smaller, because it had to make a second flush, and it made a second flush of more buds, and then we allowed those to grow full length before we cut. You know, if it made 5, we cut 3 of them. So it would have made 5 clusters of shorter needles, and then we cut that back to 2, and that's how we would get the needles short on that. But I said in July, I didn't say when in July. If I wait until the end of July to cut the needles on the smallest tree, then those second flush will have the least amount of time during growing season to grow that second flush, and it will make those even smaller. If, on the other hand, I'm saying that this is a ponderosa pine, it's totally, but let's say for a tree that is this big, see, using my hand as comparison, and we wanted the needles to be about an inch, you know, that knuckle there. Then the way to do that, we would cut the candles at the beginning of July, and that would allow the second flush to have the most possible time to regrow, and then they would grow to the longer length of bonsai, which would be an inch or an inch and a quarter, or somewhere in there. In other words, if we want the needles to be tiny, we cut them at the end of the candle cutting season. And if we want the needles to be proportionate on a larger bonsai, then we do that closer to the beginning of candle cutting season, so that they will have long enough time to get to that required length. And that's kind of a quick little synopsis on candle cutting for multi-flush pines, which would be Japanese black pines, red pines, some other, you know, and then there are more. I don't really know how many other Scots. No, I don't actually remember, but there are quite a few pine species, and a lot of them are either single flush pine or multi-flush pine, which means that they have adapted the ability to grow another flush of candles if in the spring they lose their spring growth. And that's because they've adapted that way to overcome bad climate. So what does that have to do? If that's all happening in July, what does that have to do with now? Well, if I'm going to cut the candles on this tiny tree, my Mame, if I'm going to do the candles late in July, then I need to know to take the food up late in June, because 30 days before we cut the candles, we want to take up the food so it doesn't have full coffers to make that second flush. Now, if we've repotted a tree, if the tree has been through a lot that year, if it's an older tree, or some, if the tree just for whatever reason looks weak, skip the year of candle cutting. Just skip the year and let it ride for a year. And if I skip the year and let it ride for a year, then I also don't pull up the fertilizer. This tree got repotted within a year. This tree got repotted within a year. So they're automatically getting a free pass. This is a ponderosa, so it gets to skip that. This tree didn't get repotted this year, and will be getting its needles done. The rest of these larger trees are all ponderosas, so they don't play. Those two little twins over there that we did some motion to just the other day. I'll do a finished shot of these guys. These little guys. Just slow rotate. We'll take up the food since they're the smallest. They're two little Mames in a little pot. We'll take up their fertilizer towards the end of this month, and then towards the end of next month we'll cut their candles. And that's what we need to remind. That's a little reminder of what we need to know about June. It's almost time for whatever size your black pines are, or your multi-flush pines are. If they're in a bonsai pot and you're doing shortening your needle, it would be almost time to stop your fertilizing or pick up your fertilizer sometime this month. You can see some escape roots down there. I thought we would focus in on them a little bit. But as I put this guy back, notice that I'm putting it back on substrate that I poured. This is a copper gutter that I made. And all of these guys, all of these little pots are sitting in substrate. And that is by design. It's not just because I'm sloppy. That is by design. I've got some of my leftover soil down in there. And in other instances, almost all of my trees, I make sure there's at least a little bit of substrate under. And then in some instances, I've made drip trays out of baking tins, which I know they're not the most beautiful things in the world, but this is my version of cooking. And then I put substrate in those guys, and that's very important, and that's also part of what I'm talking about for our little bit of June conversation. It is really important that the tiny little show hen and Mame trees have a little bit of a hedge against the outside heat and the summer forces. Those can get pretty harsh. Okay, so we're just seeing these little trees in their little ceramic pots, and those tiny little pots can get super hot, super fast. They just soak up the sun. The larger pots where the sun is hitting them, those square inches can get hot too, but maybe the other part is in shade and so it evens out, or maybe just the amount of substrate that the tree has, because it's a larger tree, means that it doesn't affect it. But these guys get more affected by high temperatures and more affected by low temperatures, so we have to account for that. And one way I account for that is every time I water these trees, instead of just the water pouring out and going directly away, it's allowed to go into the tins and moisten that substrate. That kind of keeps the temps down down there, it kind of keeps the pot sitting in some moist soil. If the trees want to send an escape route, that is their hedge against high heat, and it's is one thing that leads to their survival on 90-degree days. And so when I pick one up out of here and I see that it's got escape routes, I try not to break them. I try not to mess with them too much, and I try to set them back down in enough substrate that they can keep going. Later in the fall, when I don't have that to worry about, I'll have just the opposite to worry about. I'll worry about the drip trays, maintaining water. See, here's the key to it. The water doesn't build up in those. They're flat, there's a little bit of substrate. The trees can put an escape route out there and soak up some of that water if they need to, but by this time tomorrow, that water will also have evaporated off. But in the meanwhile, it still helps the trees to have a little hedge against high heat and their water restricted environment on days when it might make the difference between surviving and not. So that's my other little June tip about if you have Mame or show hen trees, as we get into the times of higher temperatures, make sure that all of your guys are hanging out in something that will allow for them a little escape route. And then whenever I said, like I said, I have the reverse problem. I don't want those things to actually fill up with water and stay there to a degree that would come up to the level of the pot, because that would kill the roots at whatever that level is. People grow wisterias that way, and people have done cypress trees that way. They are exceptions to the rule. So what other little, a little bit, I could do this, just a little bit of tool work here. Excuse me, a lot of pollen, a lot of dust. Okay, so we was just looking at this Dawn Redwood again. My guy wires are already starting to do pretty well. Everything we had intended. I had taken the wires off of these branches and they've held into place because we weren't putting hellacious motion into them as much as I was just pulling them down. And I could have pulled them down with wire, or I could have pulled them down with guy wires. The advantage of guy wires is they don't leave wire scars, and it's time to pull this one off. But it would have already done for us. Now, the tree here seems to have pretty okay energy. I'm happy with where I am on my Dawn Redwood, and whereas I'm just wanting these guys to just bust out all the lumber they can and all the photosynthesis and just make everything just go nuts. This guy is sort of pulling up to a stop. I've got a proportional height and a livable limb height. But my bottom leg, my societa, my bottom limb, those are okay. I could use something a little further down, but we are kind of pulling up to a usable height here. So the idea is not to go, I can prune this back a little more. I just don't want to wreck the health of the tree. And so I say that because I've got two limbs here that are really close together. I've got a big one and a little one. Well, I didn't want to do anything to either one of them for a minute, and for reasons. One is, what if I picked one and then lost the other? If I picked one to cut and then lost the other, then that would have been a bad choice. But between the two of them, they're very different. One is thick and one is little. I had to make sure that the little one was going to make it, but the thick one is thicker than the branches below it, and it's thicker than the branches above it. It's the one that's kind of odd out. And I think this is the second where this is the moment where I could get this guy. I'm trying to balance angle of attack and all that stuff. Boom. And then maybe let's go in here and get that a little cleaner. Oh, that's a lot cleaner. Okay. And then I like that. I do. I like that. I like that. All right. And the tree, the trident, the dawn redwood is flushing out an awful lot. And we are going to just encourage the heck out of that. I don't know. I'm going to give these guy wires another week, and then I'll pull those guys loose, and these branches should all stay there. Or maybe I'll reuse them on something else that we decide we need somewhere down the line. But I think I just fixed that one just by doing that. Anyway, that's got us covered on where we are. A little bit of woodwork. I'm getting a little bit of jump on this woodwork here. I'm trying to bring down all of this stuff, but at the same time, I don't want to kill this. All right, so we'll just leave that there. I'll clean that back some. Yeah, overall, I'm happy. I'm happy with the look on the dawn redwood. I think we're starting to, like I said, pull up to some dimensions there that are usable, and I don't have a whole lot more stuff that I want to carve off. I could bring this around like this would probably help us a little bit too. But that is just such a big old huge. Anyway, I don't know. It would be nice to see something come out down here and then allow me to remove more of that. But we'll park there for now when it comes to cutting and everything. Off camera, I'll probably remove. Off camera, I'll remove this guy, because whenever I remove these, I want to be able to hold them with one hand while I remove them with the other. Otherwise, I'll tear off buds, and that goes for this leader here, which is digging in. Okay, that's a little catch up on the on our dawn redwood. All of our seedlings are doing really well. Our little experiment over here with the colander is doing really well. And off moments, whenever I just like daydreaming and stuff, this is one of the things that I'm actually surprised how excited I'm getting over it. I wish I had put more motion in that when I was busy doing all that. And I don't want to mess with all of this. Just let it go. But the idea is we're going to make some really long roots that are just going to fill this. That are going to fill this colander too. Colander does have holes all in it, like most colanders do, and that will allow those roots to like auto prune. But these roots here are going to be allowed to stay long and lanky, and we're going to do stuff with them. And I do have some more colanders standing by. I'm dragging my heels on this because I've had lingering thoughts as to what our next stack should be. Should I make more of these out of nets and cover them with plastic? If I do all of that, I use this net to put in the bottom of my pots. If I waste all that, it's, but on the other hand, since I have to cover it in plastic, that should be a that could be a piece of PVC, or that could be a lot of other things. And I'm kind of at odds as to what I think would be neatest. And plus, I want to do that during lunch at work on the drill press. I want to drill holes in them. If it's like a piece of PVC, like I think it'll be, I want to drill holes on all four sides using the drill press, not a handheld drill. So I'm kind of waiting on that. I'm kind of waiting on a decision from me that I haven't made yet, and then about 10 minutes of my lunchtime at the drill press. But other than that, expect any minute for us to break out and do about 4 or 5 more of these. And I have space. I have space here that I'm not using, and I have space over there that I'm not using. And right now I am using, I've got some trees. I mean, I've got some trees. I've got some tools camped out here. This is just, we're gonna go into another tip. I had some tools that I was using on last week's show, hanging out over here, and they weren't all of these, but they were most of them. And we were slinging around water and stuff as I watered, and they got wet, and I didn't want my black steel tools to rust, so I brought them in immediately and threw them on a towel just to start taking some of the water away from them. And then I gave them a good wipe down with olive oil, which is food grade olive oil. And that brightens and cleans and gets resin off of pine resin, off of sharp blades if you want to take the time to work it out of there. And then once I make sure everything's got a good coating of that on it, I don't have to worry about it rusting as much. And then I usually go back and put a dot of this stuff everywhere where the pin is on the tool, just to make sure that it gets in there good. So olive oil would be my tip for cleaning and lubricating bonsai tools. You can leave it on there. It'll help preserve the tools, keeps them nice and shiny looking, and then also it will not harm the tree. If you make cuts, it won't, poison the cut site. That is, I would say that's probably a good amount of tips. We're at 26 minutes. This would be a good time to make sure that your little mames and your little show hens are all in substrate that will allow them, just a little something to keep them from baking in the hot sun, and something that will allow them to have an escape route if they want one. You can always cut that back out of the drain holes in the fall. And other than that, we want to make sure that we've got a plan B in case our temperatures skyrocket, because we're starting to get into the time of year where that could happen at any time for any of us. And also, if you do systemic treatments a couple of times a year, we're going to be entering possibly the window where you might be looking to I usually do mine around the 4th of July because I remember that as being a holiday here in the U.S. And my first round of systemic treatments will be right around New Year's. So New Year's is one holiday that I remember to add systemics to all of my trees, and then the 4th of July being the other. You can pick your own holidays. Or your own dates that you'll remember. Like and subscribe if you guys have not already. Our next drop will be this weekend. I'll probably drop 2 or 3 videos this weekend, and don't even know what that's gonna. Man, that oak is just keeps on just pushing out stuff. I'm not sure what this weekend show will be about, but I appreciate it. And thank you all so much for watching. Cue the sauce.